Village girl was mocked at banquet, but billionaire CEO fell in love at first sight. Her fate changed. Nobody noticed the girl when she entered. Dressed in a simple faded cotton suit and worn-out sandals, she looked completely out of place. At the grand banquet, the lights were blinding, chandeliers glittering like stars above heads full of pride, and tables lined with fine china and gold cutlery, men in sharp suits, and women draped in designer gowns, passed quick glances at her, their expressions twisting into half-hidden smirks. Whispers began the moment she walked in, soft, cruel, and meant to sting. Who invited her? She must be someone's maid. Is she lost? Arohi heard it all, but she kept walking. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her small purse tightly to her chest, but she lifted her chin, trying to hide the storm of emotions behind her tired eyes. She wasn't there to impress anyone. She was there because her elder sister, who worked in event management, had begged her to help serve drinks. A last-minute staff shortage, and here she was, stuck in the middle of the city's most luxurious gathering. She never imagined her life would collide with his. Just an hour earlier, Arohi had been in her small village, helping her mother knead dough for roti. Their home had no tiled floor, no running water inside, and no stable income, but it had love, honesty, and warmth. Things these people in silk and diamonds didn't understand. Now, standing at the corner of the ballroom, she was trying to stay invisible. But the mocking never stopped. One woman laughed louder than the other. Rest. Look at her shoes. She whispered to her friend, loud enough for Arohi to hear. Did she come straight from the farm? Arohi swallowed hard and turned her face away. She reminded herself that this was just one night, and she could go back to her quiet world, where judgment didn't hang in the air like perfume. Then everything changed. The room fell into a hush, like someone had pressed pause. Heads turned, conversations stopped mid-sentence, and even the laughter froze in place. That's when he walked in, Aryan Mehra, CEO of one of the top tech firms in the country. Billionaire, visionary, the kind of man people read about in magazines or see on giant billboards. Women flooded around him, like moths to flame, eager for a second of his attention. He was known for being sharp, cold, and utterly unreachable. But tonight, something unexpected happened. As Aryan walked into the ballroom, his eyes scanned the crowd with quiet disinterest. The same polished faces, the same fake laughter, nothing new. But then, his gaze paused, just for a second. He saw her. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't pretending. She stood still, lost in the crowd, a storm in her eyes and dust on her shoes. But something about her made him stop walking. Who was she? He wasn't sure. But something inside him shifted, like a forgotten melody had started to play again. While others laughed at her, he found himself intrigued. He saw courage in the way she stood her ground. He saw stories in her silence. For the first time that night, he smiled, but only slightly, and only to himself. Arohi didn't notice him. Not yet. She was too busy hiding the pain behind her small smile, too focused on making it through the evening without crying. She didn't know that someone powerful had already noticed her and was walking straight toward her. As Aryan took slow steps across the marble floor, the whispers began again. But this time, they were different. Is he going to talk to her? Why is he looking at her? She must have done something. Arohi looked up and froze. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, and his presence seemed to silence everything around him. For a second, she thought he might be asking her to move aside. But then he spoke, and his words stunned everyone, including her. "Hi, I'm Aryan," he said softly, offering his hand. "And you are?" The room gasped. Arohi blinked, unsure if she was imagining things. Her throat went dry. Arohi," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "Beautiful name," he said with a smile that made her heart skip. Everyone stared. Nobody understood what was happening. How could Aryan Mera, wealthy, powerful, and admired, possibly be interested in a girl like her? But he wasn't thinking about the banquet, the people, or their shocked faces. All he saw was a girl who looked like she didn't belong, but carried herself with quiet dignity. And that intrigued him more than anything money could buy. Arohi stepped back, unsure of his intentions. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. Her life had been full of simple joys and daily struggles, helping her mother, feeding the cows, studying under a dim bulb late at night. Men like him existed, in movies, not real life. But Aryan had already made up his mind. Their meeting was brief. A few words, a soft smile, and then he was gone, pulled into a conversation by a business associate. But something had begun that night. A thread had been woven between two very different worlds. Arohi's heart was still racing as she returned to the corner, her mind full of questions. Why did he talk to her? Was it a joke? Was he just being polite? And yet, something about the way he looked at her didn't feel fake. She didn't know it yet, but her life had just taken a turn. By the next morning, her name would be the center of gossip in elite circles. Photos of her standing next to Aryan would go viral, and people who once laughed at her would suddenly want to know her story. But none of that had happened yet. For now, she was just a village girl, still unsure of what the future held, still afraid of being hurt, still guarding her heart, and somewhere in a tall glass building, Aryan Mera couldn't stop thinking about the girl who didn't sparkle like the rest, but shone in her own quiet way. What comes next will change both of their lives forever. But for now, the story has only just begun. Arohi had barely slept that night. The silence of her village, usually peaceful and comforting, now felt heavy and loud. Her thoughts kept returning to that moment. His eyes meeting hers, the sound of his voice, the way he said her name like it mattered. She kept asking herself, why would someone like him notice someone like me? Back in her small mud house, she moved through the morning like always, fetching water, helping her mother cook, washing clothes by the hand pump, but her mind wasn't here anymore. It was still stuck in that glittering ballroom, surrounded by mocking laughter and one unexpected kindness. A few miles away, in a skyscraper that touched the clouds, Aryan sat in his office, staring at the city skyline, but thinking of none of it. His assistant kept knocking on the glass door to remind him of meetings, but he barely heard. He was a man used to making big decisions, investments, mergers, hiring CEOs, but nothing had ever confused him like this. Why did she stay on my mind? He'd met thousands of people, attended endless parties, but something about her face, her silence, her strength in that uncomfortable crowd, it refused to leave his thoughts. It wasn't attraction alone. It was curiosity. Who was she really? What was her story? He picked up his phone and made a quiet call. Find out who she is. The girl from the banquet. I want her background. Everything. Back in the village, Arohi's sister Mina noticed her restlessness. Kaya Hua, you haven't eaten properly since you came back. Arohi hesitated. She wanted to tell her about the moment, about Aryan, about how the richest man in the room had come up to her like she mattered. But it all sounded so unreal. Kuch nahi, she finally said with a small smile. Just tired. But the quiet didn't last long. By evening, a black luxury car drove into their village. It stopped right outside Arohi's house. The neighbors peeked from behind their curtains. Children ran barefoot to get a closer look. Out came a man in a sharp grey suit. "Miss Arohi," he asked politely. "Mr. Aryan Mehra would like to invite you to a private lunch meeting. He wants to speak with you." Arohi's heart skipped a beat. Mina's mouth fell open. "Lunch? With him?" Her mother was confused. "Beta, what is happening?" Arohi didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to run back inside and hide, but something inside her said, "Go. This doesn't happen by accident." The next day, she stood outside a rooftop restaurant in the city. Nervous and unsure, she wore a borrowed suit, combed her hair neatly, and kept her dupatta tightly around her shoulders. When Aryan walked in, his smile was warm. "Thank you for coming," he said. They sat. He asked her about her village, her family, her dreams. She spoke slowly, carefully, still trying to understand why any of this was happening. But as they talked, she forgot to be afraid. He didn't treat her like a project or a charity case. He listened, really listened, and she saw something in his eyes too. A tiredness, a loneliness even his wealth couldn't hide. For weeks they met again and again. Quiet lunches, long drives through the city, walks in parks where no one recognized them. And slowly, a bond began to grow, one built not on status or money, but on understanding. But nothing stays hidden forever. One evening, photos of them together were leaked online. Social media exploded. Blogs called it a billionaire's village love story. Some romanticized it, but most were cruel. She's using him. She's a gold digger. Why would he fall for her? The same people who once mocked her at the banquet now mocked her everywhere. Arohi was devastated. She had never asked for this attention. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists showed up at her village gate. Her mother fell sick from the stress. The peaceful life she once had was gone. Aryan tried to protect her. He held a press conference saying, "She's not just someone I'm seeing. She's someone I admire deeply. So if you have anything to say it to me." But the more he defended her, the worse the backlash grew. Investors questioned his judgment. His company's shares dropped. Board members called for meetings. And just when it all felt like too much, something even worse happened. Aryan's ex-fiancée returned to the spotlight. Ria Malhotra, wealthy, poised, and still bitter from their broken engagement, held an interview saying, "This girl is just a distraction. Aryan will realize it soon." She didn't stop there. She reached out to Arohi directly, under the disguise of being friendly, only to plant doubts. "You think he'll choose you in the end? You really think you belong in his world?" Arohi tried to stay strong, but she started pulling away. She stopped returning Aryan's calls. She avoided his messages. And one day, when he showed up at her village again, she told him something that shattered him. "You need to think about your life, your business, your reputation. I'm not worth losing everything." But Aryan looked at her, eyes burning. "You think I care about reputation more than you? I think," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I think I'm tired of being everyone's joke." Aryan didn't say anything after that. He stepped back, gave her the space she asked for, but inside, he knew he wasn't ready to let her go. And what neither of them knew was that someone else had been watching closely, someone who didn't want them together, someone who would stop at nothing to make sure Arohi disappeared from Aryan's life forever. The question wasn't just whether love could survive differences in background or social pressure. The question was, what happens when someone tries to destroy it completely? The climax was coming. and Arohi's fate was about to take another unexpected turn. For days, Arohi stayed away. She focused on her mother's health, helped Mina with chores, and tried to forget the ache that sat heavy in her chest. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't forget Arian's eyes when she said goodbye, the hurt in them, the silence that followed. Meanwhile, Arian threw himself into work. But even billion-dollar meetings felt hollow. His heart wasn't in the boardroom anymore. It was stuck in a quiet village, in a mud house where a girl with fire in her eyes had taught him what real strength looked like. He replayed everything, her laughter during their walks, the way she bit her lip when nervous, her hesitation before, every goodbye. He missed her, deeply. But as their worlds drifted apart, someone else was watching closely, Ria Malhotra. She had waited for this moment. To her, Arohi was a passing shadow, a village girl who had no right to climb into a world she didn't belong to. And now, with public pressure, board unrest, and Arian's company at risk, she had her chance. She pulled every string she could. Behind closed doors, she manipulated shareholders, leaked false stories about Arohi, photoshopped fake messages, painted Arohi as a social climber, and fed the media narrative that Arian was under some kind of emotional pressure. She even tried to bribe a local reporter to dig up dirt on Arohi's family. And then, the final blow, a legal notice was sent to Arian from within his own company, a warning to step down temporarily due to reckless personal decisions that were hurting investor confidence. The very people who once praised his vision now questioned his heart. Arian had a choice: protect his empire or protect the girl who had nothing but truth on her side. But love doesn't ask for safe choices. It asks for real ones. Arian stood up at the next press conference and shocked everyone. You want answers? Fine. Yes, I fell in love with someone who had no money, no fame, but more courage than most people I know. If loving her is the reason you want to push me out, then maybe I don't belong in this chair anymore. But I'd rather lose my title than lose her. The room went silent. Back in the village, Arohi was sitting outside with a glass of chai when the news reached her. She watched Arian on the TV screen, standing tall, calm, proud, and speaking her name in front of the world. Tears welled up in her eyes. Later that evening, Arian's car rolled into her village again, but this time, he didn't wait outside. He walked straight to her door. Arohi opened it, eyes wide, unsure if she was dreaming. He didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at her, like he'd finally found something he'd been searching for his whole life. You were never the one who didn't belong, he said gently. I was the one who was lost. Arohi's voice trembled. But your company, I don't care. He interrupted. I'll build another one if I have to, but I can't build another you. That night, the two of them sat on the rooftop of her house. Under the open sky, no cameras, no crowd, just two hearts finding peace in each other. The storm had passed. Ria's lies were exposed. Arian's board, seeing the public support here, had won after the press conference, reversed their decision. The company's shares soared again. And Arohi, she returned to the city, but not as a helper at someone else's event. Arian helped her launch her own foundation, an initiative to empower rural girls, give them education, skill training, and dignity. The girl who was once mocked at a banquet became the voice for hundreds like her. People finally stopped laughing. Instead, they listened. Love had not only changed Arohi's fate, it had given her a purpose. And Arian? He found more than love. He found meaning. Their story became a quiet inspiration, not because it was about a billionaire and a village girl, but because it reminded everyone that kindness still matters, that real strength is quiet, and that sometimes the most powerful love is the one that doesn't try to change who you are, but helps you become everything you were meant to be. And somewhere in a corner of the world, a girl with dusty sandals reminded the world that being underestimated is often the greatest strength of all.